You walked in, and the floor creaked in certain spots you learned to expect, near the candy counter, by the stationery aisle, right past the parakeet cages. The air smelled like popcorn from the machine in the front, mixed with something harder to name, wood polish, or the faint mustiness of cardboard boxes stacked in the back. The aisles were narrow, lined with wooden shelves and glass cases, and the merchandise sat close enough that you had to turn sideways if someone was coming the other way. This was the five and dime, Woolworths, Ben Franklin, Kresge's, McCrory's. Every town had one, and they all felt similar. The layout wasn't flashy, it was practical. Housewares in one section, toys in another, stationery, hardware, sewing notions, pet supplies, all of it under one roof, arranged by type rather than brand. You visited because it was fun to look around. Even if you didn't buy something, you wanted to window shop. It seemed like they had everything. Dish towels folded next to goldfish bowls, spools of thread in a wooden cabinet with tiny drawers, combs, hair rollers, handkerchiefs, notebooks, pencils, erasers with the price stamped right on the wrapper, a wall of greeting cards you could flip through one by one, garden gloves, hammers, yo-yos, Halloween masks in October, Valentine cards in February, everything marked with a little paper tag tied on with string. The prices were low, a comb for a dime, a notebook for 15 cents, socks for a quarter. If you were a kid, you could walk in with $1 and come out with a comic book, a balsa wood glider, a pack of baseball cards, and a candy bar, and still have change left over. You loved the feeling of independence making the purchase yourself, and it was fun to go with your parents for a special trip sometimes, too. It wasn't that the merchandise was expensive elsewhere. It was that here, it was accessible. You could visit frequently and make small purchases. It was a place you could stop into on your way home without planning ahead. The clerk stood behind counters instead of throughout the store. If you wanted something from the jewelry case or the stationery section, you asked, and they'd unlock it, wrap it in brown paper, write a ticket, and send you up front to pay. It took longer than just grabbing something off a shelf, but it also meant someone was there. Sometimes it seemed like the same employees worked there for years, and they remembered your favorite parts of the store to visit and your name. Many of the five and dimes had lunch counters. You'd sit on a round vinyl stool, spin it once or twice if no one was looking, and order a grilled cheese or a piece of pie. The cook worked a flat-top grill behind the counter where you could watch. Coffee was a dime. Pie was 35 cents. It wasn't fancy, but it turned a shopping trip into something more. You'd see neighbors. You'd rest for a few minutes. The counter made the store feel less like an errand and more like a special moment in time. For decades, from the 1930s into the early 1960s, this was how much of America shopped. The business itself was straightforward. Five and dimes bought in volume and sold at low margins. They made money by moving thousands of small items to thousands of people every week. The goods were simple, most of them made in American factories that could produce everyday products at scale. A glass tumbler from Ohio, a wooden toy from Pennsylvania, thread from North Carolina. The supply chain was short. The costs were manageable. And because the stores were on Main Street where people already walked, foot traffic was always nearby. But that arrangement depended on certain things staying in place, including rent on a downtown storefront. It also depended on wages for clerks who worked the counters. It also depended on a supply of American-made goods that could be sold cheaply and still turn a profit. By the 1960s, those pieces were all starting to shift. Wages were rising. Downtown rents were climbing. At the same time, a different kind of store was opening on the edge of town. Big, flat-roof buildings on cheap land, surrounded by parking lots. Kmart, Walmart, Target. They put everything on open shelves and let you pick it out yourself. You carried your items to the checkout area, paid, and left. Because the stores were larger and built where land was cheaper, they could sell the same items for less. They ordered in massive volume, which gave them leverage with manufacturers. And increasingly, the products they stocked weren't coming from American factories. By the 1970s and 80s, many everyday items were being made overseas for a fraction of what domestic production cost. The five and dime couldn't match that. Their entire model had been built around reasonable margins on American-made goods sold in small quantities from expensive storefronts. When the cost of goods dropped elsewhere and rent stayed high downtown, the numbers stopped working. Customers noticed, though not all at once. You might still stop at Woolworth's for lunch, or to pick up a birthday card, or because it was familiar. But when you needed cleaning supplies, or school notebooks, or anything you were buying more than one of, you started driving to the discount store. It wasn't that the five and dime had gotten worse. It was that the alternative was cheaper, and for most families, that mattered. The shift also reflected a change in how people moved through their weeks. Five and dimes had thrived in an era of afternoons spent walking downtown to run errands, and of stopping in 2 or 3 times a week to pick up small things. But by the 1970s, most households had cars, and shopping patterns had adjusted. Instead of browsing, people stocked up. Instead of small trips, they made one big one. The five and dimes layout, compact, personal, built for variety, didn't fit that rhythm anymore. Woolworths tried to adapt. They opened bigger stores. They experimented with different formats. But the core challenge remained. Their costs were higher. Their merchandise was pricier. And the reasons people had once chosen them, the location, the familiarity, the service, weren't enough to offset the difference in price. By the 1980s, the closures began in earnest. Stores that had been open for 50 years shut their doors. Lunch counters were dismantled. Display cases were cleared out. The parakeets disappeared. Some buildings were converted into other businesses. Others sat empty, the wooden floors still creaking when someone walked through to check the property. Woolworth's closed its last five and dime in the United States in 1997. A few smaller regional chains held on a little longer, but the era had ended. They were replaced by discount stores that offered lower prices and more selection, but they didn't offer the same kind of place. You didn't know the people working there. You didn't stop for lunch. The transaction was efficient, but it wasn't woven into the fabric of your day the same way. The discount chains also made everyday goods accessible and affordable. They just did it under different conditions, in different buildings, at a different pace. The mechanics changed, the experience changed, but you could still get what you needed without spending more than you had to. If this brought back memories for you, the smell of the popcorn, the weight of the paper bag, the clerk who knew where the birthday candles were kept, please like this video. Subscribe if you like more of these quiet looks at how ordinary things gradually changed. And if your five and dime was different, or if there's something you remembered that I didn't mention, leave a comment. I'd like to hear it. The five and dime vanished because the world it had been built for changed. The streets, the costs, the goods, the way people shopped and traveled, all of it shifted, and the stores couldn't shift with it. Understanding that doesn't change the memories. Those are yours to keep.